Welcome to Eco Insights with the EcoEngineers team. My name is Kathy Macbeth, and I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing here at EcoEngineers, and I'm joined today by Sashi, Jim, Joe, Karen, Lindsay, Brad, Natasha, and Roxby. Today's Eco Insight topic is, what impacts are we seeing on the market from COVID-19? Let's talk about the good, the bad, the not so good, and where can we find a silver lining? Because there are other things going on out there besides COVID-19 today. We've had some really good news in the last couple of weeks. One of the most, you may have seen our post on the Dane County Hub and Spoke RFS registration approval. That was great news for the industry, for the RNG industry. We've also had ACE Ethanol implement the D3 max cellulosic ethanol, ethanol production. Again, more good news for the ethanol industry. And EPA and CARB have both approved EcoEngineers virtual site visit protocols so that we can continue to keep the market moving forward and credit generation happening across all fuel types. So there's quite a bit to talk about besides COVID-19, but COVID-19 is also a topic we can address because it's the burning question on everybody's mind today. So I'd just like to toss that question out there to the group. Who'd like to step in and weigh in on COVID-19 or the good, the not so good, what's going on in the biofuels market today?
Thanks, Kathy. It's Jim. I appreciate the way you kicked that off with some good news. Thanks for that. I was going to mention a couple other pieces of good news in the ethanol space. So one thing that the industry accomplished in the last month was the ASTM approval of the kernel fiber sampling and analysis methodology. So that an ASTM approved method exists today, and we're looking for that to open up kernel fiber markets, open kernel fiber markets back up at the EPA. And I think that is something that would be really important to industry. It has impacts on the RFS, and it can also, today producers are sending kernel fiber ethanol to California, and there's a lot of pathways into California, over 30. And the RFS is lagging behind. They haven't done any for several years. But this ASTM is another step in the right direction to reopen those pathways at the EPA. And we're really hoping that that happens, especially in this year of COVID-19. I think the other thing that's positive is that the blend economics are still positive. And so people are still putting in E15 and E85, and ethanol with RINs is still positive blend economics. So everyone's heard that gasoline volumes are way down, and that's true. So people are reporting 40 to 50% reductions in gasoline use, but the economics on blending ethanol are still good based on the RIN prices. And yeah, so that would be my 2 cents from ethanol space.
Yeah, hey, thanks for the great news, and good job out of everyone staying off the road. Not that it's great for ethanol, but it's going to get that COVID-19 kicked right out of here. We're back to normal in no time. Who wants to go next?
Kathy, I can talk a little bit about RNG, and I think the good news, maybe we'll start there, is projects don't really seem to be, slowing down with this. In fact, a lot of people are sitting at home. I know I've got a lot more done over the last month than trying to juggle travel and working from the road, and we're starting to see a lot of people just really focusing on getting some of their projects and issues across the finish line. So I think that's a good thing. I think LCFS credit values being still as high as they are. I know on the D3 RIN space, we've seen some deep price erosion of the D3 RIN, and that's I think a lot to do directly with the COVID-19 situation, which if you think about RNG, it's a lot different than the liquid fuel. So like Jim was talking about ethanol, if the gasoline supply is down 50%, then basically the ethanol RIN generation is going to be down 50%. Well, in RNG, since those physical molecules aren't going towards fuel consumption in most cases, then the industry is still going to produce those higher levels. But then if the overall use of transportation fuel goes down, there's a potential to have an oversupply of D3 RINs compared to what the actual obligation will be for these obligated parties. So it makes RNG a little bit unique, and I think it does puts the D3 RIN price at risk. And we've seen some of the other D codes chugging along nicely, D3 going down. I think that has definitely something to do with it. But I also think the good thing is the EPA released some of their data on actual RIN generation in March, and it wasn't anywhere near what that needed to be to hit the 590 million RVO mark on a monthly basis. So I think Roxby can talk about what the diesel demand. I don't think the diesel demand has been nearly as impacted as gasoline, and so
No.
if we get through this just slightly, in the next few months, I think RNG impact probably a little bit more on the D3 side will be an impact, but the LCFS price is remaining strong, and I think that's a big driver to a lot of these projects. So some definite impacts, but still a lot of good things happening and a lot of projects moving forward, and we need those projects to come online in order to hit these RVO numbers for this year and to set the stage for EPA and the RVOs for next year.
Yeah, that's awesome. You and I were talking earlier too. I mean, at the RNG Coalition back in December, everybody was estimating or projecting that we'd see D3 RIN prices back at $1.50 or so. And weren't they pretty much headed that way until this COVID-19 thing got in our way?
Yeah, I mean, I think they hit $1.65, $1.70 at the end of January, and then we're staying strong in February, and then this has impacted things, and just with the nature of and Karen can talk more about how the regulation of RFS is set up, but just the nature of it, the RVO will be reset again for next year, and so unless this really carries over into next year, hopefully this is just contained into a 2020 type pricing situation, and if your project's not going to come online until 2021 2022, then we'll get through this and we'll kind of get back on track to where things are more normal next year and beyond.
Yeah, I like that idea. Put COVID-19 in the rearview mirror. Hey, who wants to weigh in next?
Well, I just have a question for Brad to follow up on what he was just saying. Our project developers who are planning for 2022 and 2023, how are they seeing the RIN situation? The EPA has not come up with the guidance or rulemaking on post 2022 RFS. Do you see people discounting RINs completely after post 2022?
I don't think discounting completely, Shashi. I think it's something you have to take into consideration, and the way things have been going, and people thinking maybe this will just continue year over year. We don't really have any direct guidance from EPA, so how will things go year to year going forward? What we've seen a lot of is do some sensitivity analysis around that of what if RINs go to 50 cents for a longer term period, what impact does that have on your project? But I think in the short term, using what historical D3 RIN prices have been on aggregate and on average over the last few years is pretty sound and pretty common to do that in a pro forma. And then just you have to know that number can go up or down based on market conditions or based on any future guidance from EPA on how things may be administered or how the RVOs are set going forward.
Yeah, I was just going to add in, one of the unique things about RNG is the storage capability, right? So even if your bus fleets in California aren't, going down their normal routes and consuming as much CNG that they normally are, projects can put that gas into storage, and then, it's delayed revenue, but it's not lost revenue, right, Brad?
Yeah, and the same with generating RINs. Even if you do have enough dispensing capacity to generate your credits, you get to choose when to sell them, or work with your offtake broker. That may be what you'll do. A lot of people held on to RINs late last year when they were 60, 70 cents, and then you can sell those later in the year. So it's not like you have to monetize those at these current lower prices or lower values. You, as the RIN owner, get to decide when to sell those and when to move those when prices, hopefully come back later in the year.
Yeah, Karen, that was a great point. I'm just wondering what you're seeing or thinking or observing about the impact on the RBOs.
Right. I mean, so I think a good way to think about the RBOs isn't in the terms of gallons, it's in the terms of a percentage. So, if we have less consumption, then, really the renewable portion of that consumption is only 11.5%. So, that translated into gallons is then our new RVO. One of the interesting things that I saw come out today in the news was that governors of 4 states have petitioned EPA to entirely waive the 2020 RVO due to economic harm. So, this kind of issue is developing, and there certainly could be a basis to, that there is an economic harm here to waive part or, some of the 2020 RVO. So it'll be interesting to see how EPA responds to that request.
Karen, what I said about blend economics, that blend economics is not good if there's not RINs. That would be a showstopper. And the aromatics actually cost less than ethanol today in the world markets. So no RINs is no good. That's a bad deal.
Jim, ethanol couldn't do what Karen mentioned and just build like a 1 billion gallon storage tank for ethanol and store it?
No, we can't do that.
Hey, Roxby, what are we seeing happening in the
Yeah.
diesel market?
The diesel market hasn't been as badly affected as ethanol. We have the same storage problems, but fortunately, diesel tracks GDP. Goods still need to move. So diesel sales are down maybe 10 to 20%. So most of the people are still being able to move biodiesel and renewable diesel, people I've talked to. California, it's more difficult in the fact that a lot of the local producers use UCO, and so UCO feedstock is drying up. There's some concern over distillers corn oil. As the ethanol plants close down, then obviously the supply of that is going to shrink. So I think the price of that might go up as well.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks for that weigh in. Hey, Natasha, I thought maybe you'd want to make some comments on the EV market or hydrogen. There seems like to be a lot of activity in that space these days.
Yeah, I was just going to say, talking about the LCFS market, both electric pathways and hydrogen rely solely on the LCFS because that's the only place they're accepted, similar to the kernel fiber ethanol Jim was talking about earlier. So when the amount of deficits that are generated in California go down, that means that the number of credits that have to be generated to match it goes down. So I think that is, what's causing this big concern in California around the credit generation, and are prices going to stay the same? Are they going to go down? Are they just going to go past this new ceiling that was just implemented this last week? But as for hydrogen and electricity, I think we're going to see something closer to what ethanol is facing because they're passenger vehicles, right? But they're based off of the utility when you talk about electric vehicles. So if you have like a metered versus a non-metered residential pathway, that will make a big difference, because if it's a not metered residential pathway and it's based solely off the number of houses in your jurisdiction, that credit generation doesn't change if people are driving their cars and charging them or not. But when you have a metered pathway and people aren't charging their cars and they're not using them on a daily basis, then your credit generation definitely decreases.
Great, thanks for that, Natasha. Hey, I wanted to give a shout out to Lindsay too. Lindsay's our marketing coordinator here at EcoEngineers, and she produces all of our webinars, our marketing collateral, keeps our website up to speed, and just overall keeps everybody looking good. So I just want to give a shout out to Lindsay. And Lindsay, why don't you give a few stats on how our RMG and CI webinar went earlier this week?
Yeah, so it was actually a huge success. We had almost 400 people attend the webinar. We thought it was really well timed because a lot of people are stuck at home, kind of like we are. Everybody's in their own spaces. Yeah, I mean, everybody seemed to really like it. We had a lot of questions at the end, and we've been reaching out to people. Brad, Natasha, and our carbon analyst, Dr. Zhizhao Wang, he also participated in the webinar answering questions about carbon intensity and how carbon intensity changes based on different RNG facilities. And we're hoping to hold more webinars later, especially during all of this COVID stuff, to keep people engaged and keep people informed. So.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that. It's a great way to connect with the market, because usually we're out talking to everybody and seeing you face to face, and quite frankly, we just miss you all. So we wanted to share these eco insights with you. All right, well, let's call that a wrap for this this week's Eco Insights. I want to thank everybody out there in the audience who's watched this. I hope you've enjoyed listening in on our discussion here at EcoEngineers. And if you made it this far into the presentation, send me an email, and we're going to send you one of these nifty eco water bottles as an appreciation. So until next time, be safe out there, be well, take care, bye-bye.
Thanks, Kathy.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.